Hello, my name is Mark Applegate. I'm a certified industrial hygienist. I'm the senior certified industrial hygienist for SaLUT Incorporated, located in Washington, D.C. Today we're talking about training on task hazard analyses for cleaning and sanitizing of facilities and buildings that are potentially contaminated with COVID-19 coronavirus. So the task hazard analysis is describes the personal protective equipment and the hazards and the responsibilities and procedures for cleaning and sanitizing those buildings. One of the kind of definitions I want to bring up in the beginning is the difference between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. So cleaning can be basically organizing and just kind of wiping up things and just kind of making it look nice. Sanitizing is where it's cleaning to the level of you're actually killing some of the viruses and or bacteria, in this case viruses, but it can't kill all of it. So sanitizing will pretty much knock down the level of a virus or bacteria to a level that's not going to be a health hazard. While disinfecting is actually killing every one of the viruses and or bacteria. Disinfecting is used in laboratories where they can't have one of a virus available on a desk, on equipment and tools. Now, chemicals that are used for sanitizing are called disinfectants. The reason they're called disinfectants is because they can actually kill all of the viruses, or sometimes they'll say 99.99% of the viruses. But basically the disinfectant chemicals will kill. They can also be called sanitizers. So continuing on with this, this is a task hazard analysis, again, for the cleaning and sanitizing of facilities and buildings for COVID-19 viruses. So the first thing, the responsibilities for this type of project is a very important issue. So every person has their responsibilities, whether it's the project manager, the field supervisor, the workers. So starting at the project manager, the project manager is to assure that there's at least one person at each work site that has training in CPR and first aid. Now, this may not be necessary if there's emergency service within 15 minutes, and that could be a police department, if a police responder, fire responder, or emergency ambulance or first aid units. So, but if not, you have to have someone there, at least one person per group, that's always at the site, that's fully knowledgeable and capable of providing CPR and first aid. Also, the project manager's responsibility is to assure the field supervisor that there is a field supervisor at each site, work site, having more than 2 workers present. Also, the project manager is to assure that each site employee is capable of providing the services dictated, including properly qualified to use those personal protective equipment prescribed for their assigned tasks. Also, the project manager's responsibility is to assure that each employee working at the site has been fully trained and capable in their assignments, and also properly orient any new employee or workers as to their duties, responsibilities, procedures, and health and safety requirements prior to initiating cleaning or sanitizing of a location. And finally, the project manager's responsibility is to provide safety data sheets for all of the chemicals that will be present or used at the site. Now, the responsibilities for a field supervisor. So the project manager can be back in the office and basically setting up the project, being there and making sure that it's properly organized, people arrive on time and set. Also that the project manager is to make sure that the field supervisor is fully knowledgeable and aware and capable of supervising the employees in the field, and that the field supervisor has the understanding of the procedures as prescribed by the project manager. So the responsibilities, specific responsibilities of field supervisor is to assure that each employee is informed of the status of the location, including if there have been positive indications of current and or previous COVID-19 contamination and or exposure. So this is to alert people that there had been an exposure there, someone who, a worker at that location had contracted COVID-19. So it just kind of gives you an indication of the level of the hazard. We all know that we're working at sites that potentially could have COVID-19, but it kind of ramps it up to a different level when it's confirmed that there was COVID-19 exposure at that site. So it just kind of makes sure that everybody takes their job seriously and that they follow the procedures without fail. So also the field supervisors assure that each worker is present and capable of completing their assigned tasks. So the field supervisor will be there when the workers arrive. They will check the conditions of the workers, if they're sick, if they're hungover, if they're injured, or otherwise capable of doing their tasks. So they'll make sure at the site that everything's all lined up and ready to go with the workers. Also, the field supervisor responsibility is to ensure that each worker has access to and properly uses the personal protective equipment that's available. And also the field supervisors to make sure that all PPE, personal protective equipment, is there at the site, and that each person has their personal protective equipment, respirators or gloves, that type of thing, and that their PPE is in proper working order and conditions. So again, the field supervisor's responsibility is to ensure that procedures for cleaning and sanitizing are established for the facility, and that each worker fully understands those procedures and their responsibilities in following those procedures. Also, the field supervisor's responsibility is to assure that all equipment, PPE, tools, etc. are properly decontaminated at the end of the day's activities. The field supervisor will ensure that each worker fully utilizes their assigned PPE at all times and follows proper donning, doffing, and PPE decontaminating procedures. Donning is the process of putting on your personal protective equipment. Doffing is the process of removing and taking off your personal protective equipment. Now, the field supervisor is responsible for properly installing warning signage and tapes that's set up around the operations to show that we're in there cleaning, and that basically to alert the public in that area that we're in the process of sanitizing the building and facility. So it's make sure that people don't walk in on you while we're spraying all this chemicals, or while we're working, so they don't slip and trip. But we need to make sure that signage is up. Okay. Also, the field supervisors assure that the post-cleaning sanitization evaluation is completed prior to moving to the next facility and or location. This includes placing signage declaring that the location facility has been sanitized, has the SaLUT company name, has the date, and any contact information. So that shows that that location has been sanitized and the date of sanitizing. Okay, this section of the task hazard analysis concerns personal protective equipment, or PPE. The workers will be at what's called level C. There's level A, B, C, D, and there's different modifications. So level A is the most protective, and that's typically the big suits full of air, and they get tanks, air tanks on their back. Level B can be a SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus, but not the full air tanks, but everything taped up. So level C, we're at an elevated level of protection, adequate for protecting, for in this case, the coronavirus. So level C includes a respirator, which is going to be a full face or a half mask air purifying respirator, or APR, with a magenta HEPA cartridge. HEPA stands for high efficiency particulate air. So it's capable of filtering out any of the viruses, any of the particulates or viruses in the air. Workers shall be OSHA approved to use respirators and properly fit tested. The eye protection, so chemical goggles will be worn at all times if you're not wearing a full face respirator or full face APR. Clothing. Okay, clothing must meet the needs for weather and climate conditions, as well as protection from the hazards. So we recommend that if you're going to wear personal clothes, that you might have some coveralls that will go over your personal clothes, that would be underneath your protective chemical covering. That way, as you take your covering off, you still have one other layer here that potentially could get contaminated from doffing your equipment, but then you take that off and then that would be washed separately, and you have your private clothes you can wear in the car, you go home and go to your home and family. So coveralls, it's going to be external, is the coated liquid resistant Tychem style coverall with a hood worn over cloth coveralls. So the cloth coveralls, again, is something you can wear over your personal clothes underneath your Tychem. Full skin protection with all interfaces taped, no tears. If you're going to be using decountable or reusable PPE like the Tychem, you don't need to actually duct tape up all of the seams. It should be adequate just to zip it up. There might be a little bit of opening space up underneath the chin, but basically they're zipped up all the way as far as you can go. So fully zipped and no personal clothing exposed. Coveralls must be liquid resistant to sustain liquid decontamination if being reused. Tyvek style coveralls, so it's kind of the white fabric coveralls, they're disposable. You can't decon those properly with chemicals. So Tyvek style coveralls may be used at work, but they got to be properly doffed and disposed of after doffing. So head covers. So you're going to basically have a hood, which is a coverall hood. Wearing a hard hat is not necessary unless there's overhead hazards. In this case is where you're working in offices or buildings. Typically you're not going to have overhead hazards. Shoe covers. So rubber disposable booties can be worn over your leather shoes or other types of shoes. We recommend using boots that are kind of protect your ankles, because you're going to do a lot of moving and you know, slippery surfaces, that type of thing. But either wear the rubber booties over the top of your leather work shoes, or you can wear decountable rubber boots. Gloves. So when available and during fogging, the use of long, near elbow length, tear-resistant work gloves are recommended. Disposable inner glove of nitrile. So you'd put your nitrile blue gloves underneath and put your other gloves on top. Now you can wear disposable cotton glove liners inside, because your hands are going to typically sweat. So you can plug there. So if you wear the cotton liners inside, it's going to help if you sweat. It's going to be a little more tactile, not so wet and grimy inside. So also you can use, or you can just use nitrile gloves. So if you're just going to be wiping and not a lot of hard sweeping and that type of thing, the nitrile gloves should hold up pretty good. Typically the larger, more durable gloves are recommended for when mopping and stuff, if you're going to be using a lot of pushing and pulling and putting stress on the gloves. You don't want to tear your gloves, basically. So boots, like I said, it can be comfortable work boots, and you could wear rubber disposable booties on top of those, or decountable, medium, kind of shin-high rubber boots. Okay, so now going from PPE, we're going to talk about some of the physical hazards. So while we're at this site, we're all geared up. Basically, you're going to have kind of reduced agility. So you're not going to be able to see things as easy because of the masks or the goggles. You're going to be putting liquids down and chemicals, application chemicals, at 3 or 4 people working together in a sometimes, you know, in unusual areas that you're not familiar with. So one of the things you have to watch out for is slips, trips, and falls. So we will be applying chemicals onto the ground, under the floors, and on walls, and we're going to be stretching and moving things around. So the ground can be slippery. So be aware that you walk carefully, don't run, be aware of your surroundings, be aware of your pathways as you're walking, and also other people around you. Now, I don't know if anyone's going to be going up onto ladders. If you are going to be going on ladders, you need to be trained in fall protection in accordance with 29 CFR 1926-503 prior to using any ladders. Now chemical hazards. So basically all the chemicals that we're going to be using, we should have safety data sheets at the location and available. Now the information on the safety data sheets should be reviewed prior to going onto the site. So the field supervisor should have those available and discuss those, kind of have a little tailgate safety meeting prior to the day's cleaning efforts. And those should be available. If you have any questions on how to use those or any questions about the information on those, you should bring that up with your field supervisor. Okay, so now biological hazards. So we're going to be at the site to basically sanitize for COVID-19. It's a virus. Basically, it's an airborne virus. Its principal method of infecting other people is through airborne, inhalation. There's a lot of information out there about getting it on your hands and whether it's in food and on the bottom of your shoes, that type of thing. So, but principally, this is the COVID-19 coronavirus is an airborne virus. It goes deep into your lungs. The whole physics about that is such that the size of it, it's a round object and it's a very small size, that when you inhale it, they go deep down into the lungs, and that's where they actually kind of drop their little their DNA. Typically, having it on your skin, it has a long ways to go from there to get into your lungs. So the principal route of entry is through inhalation. You just don't want to, if you have it on your hands and you wipe it on your clothes, it can become airborne because of the fabrics of your clothes. So have you seen where you get dirt on your clothes and you hit your clothes and all the dust kicks off? So then you can inhale it. So the reason you want to keep it off of your hands is that you might wipe your arms, or you might sneeze on your arms and stuff, and it can become airborne that way. Also, as you're cleaning a building or an area, there's going to be dust. So if there was coronavirus in the air at that location, and whether someone was coughing or just breathing or yelling or screaming, basically when you're coughing, the large particles are going to fall down. So it might fall down on a desk, and the smaller particles are going to stay airborne longer, and they can settle in dust in other areas. Typically, if a virus settles on a desk, it's not going to re-enter the air. It'll stick to the desk. But the thing is, they tend to stick to dust and other particles, and they can stay in the air. So your activities there are actually creating dust. As you're moving along in the room, you're creating a dust cloud around you that you can't see. So that's why you have to maintain all of your PPE and your respirator at all times while you're working. Just because you stopped wiping something and you step back, you don't take your respirator off. The only time you'll take your respirator off is when you have gone outside and you've doffed your equipment properly. And I have another video talking about donning and doffing and decontaminating PPE. So some of the what you see on TV is they say that skin, eye inhalation. Principally, in practically every case, it's inhalation. So there's no evidence showing that it actually goes from your hand into your eye down to your lungs, or in blood transfusions or anything like that. So so the part of being there and sanitizing is you're using chemicals. You're going to spray on the area, and you're going to wipe it. And so when you're wiping, you want to not kick up any dust, or reduce the amount of dust you're kicking up. Okay, so so the biological hazards, basically the chemicals we're using they can kill the virus, but the process we're using is using chemicals that can kill it, plus we're removing anything that can become airborne. So we're cleaning up the dust. So focus on cleaning dust and cleaning the particulates. And so that can be up above the doors, on desks, on top of computer screens, on computer screens, that type of thing. We want to get the dust up that can contain some of the coronavirus. All right, so now remediation and sterilization procedures. So I'm going to talk about the procedures for the cleaning and sanitizing. So recommended tools, for example, shovels or other scraping tools if needed. So if you're in a situation where there's a lot of gross feces or just junk, garbage on the ground that you can't really just clean up with a rag or something, you might use a shovel, flat type, or a scraping tool, a spatula or something like that if needed. Now, we're going to need wetting devices such as spray bottles, portable hand pressurized or hand pumped sprayers. That can be where you can pump the sprayer while it's on your backpack and you can spray. And then also mops, buckets as needed, Swifter type floor cleaners. So there's different types of tools. Your field supervisor should make sure that all tools that are needed are available there. And again, the project manager makes sure that they're all purchased and available to be brought to the sites and that they are delivered to the sites. Now, cleaning supplies. So disinfectant wetting solutions. So not really promoting any brands, but basically what we're using at the sites is sodium hypochlorite. Now there's not a lot of agreement as the exact concentration needed, but basically I would recommend between 0.1 and 0.5%. Now you need to take a look at your sodium hypochlorite, which basically is bleach, chlorine bleach. Clorox is a manufacturer, but take a look at the concentration. So typically they used to be 8% concentration back 20 years ago, then it went to 7 and 6. So actually what you're buying in a store might be 6%. So, and you want to try to get to about 1,000 parts per million or 5,000 parts per million. So that's 0.1 to 0.5%. So from 6%, dilute it down to 0.1%. Also, you need to, when you use these types of chemicals, you need to spray it and let it sit for greater than or equal at least 10 minutes. And sodium hypochlorite should be used mainly on the floors and other surfaces that don't get damaged by Clorox bleach, okay, and won't absorb it. If you spray it on fabrics, it can discolor the fabrics. So be careful using the sodium hypochlorite. Currently, we don't have a lot of other cleaning materials. It seems to be difficult to purchase those, but also things can be used, for example, Lysol Clean and Fresh multi-surface cleaner, which used to be readily available. Now you can't find them in the supermarkets, but those can be used for like cleaning desks and that type of thing. One of the issues you have to be careful with is that when you spray, for example, the sodium hypochlorite on a desk and letting it sit there for 10 minutes, that can damage the desk. So try to be careful to not damage desks with your disinfectants. But the longer you leave the disinfectant, the more effective it is. So now there is an EPA, what they call an N list of approved disinfectants for viruses. Basically, that list, what they call, it isn't really recommended. It's just a list that the EPA put together. Now in that list, it describes what viruses they have been known to kill. None of them right now say that they are known to kill the coronavirus or this COVID-19. Some of them, like 8 out of the 100, say that they have been used for killing coronavirus, which is the past versions like Sars. We can't find any of those; they're not available at the moment, but we're still looking for that. And that is the responsibility of the project manager, is to locate and procure the proper equipment and cleaning supplies. So also some more cleaning supplies would be scrub brushes, sponges, pads, or cloths for cleaning surfaces. If you're going to use something like a paper towel, use a heavy-duty paper towel, something that's more like an industrial use, comes in a box, comes out, so it's disposable, but it's not going to tear up in your hands. So also you can use some of the supplies is the red heavy-duty bio-waste bags. So as you're cleaning with these disposable rags and stuff, they need to be thrown into the bio-waste bag. It's going to be a red bag. So there needs to be a location at each work area where those can be thrown in there and collected. Also, biohazards or infectious materials tape. It needs to be purchased and procured. That would be put up on the outside while the cleaning is in progress. And also caution tape. So basically it's just to keep people from walking in on you. If you're working in an active office, it will secure your work area, so as you're cleaning, you're not going to be having people walking in and around, or no one's going to walk in, accidentally slip and fall and cause an issue. Okay, so one of the things that that's needed when you're going to do a site is a site preparation and engineering controls. So proper planning and preparation are essential in order to safely and effectively remediate these types of cleaning projects. Care must be taken to prevent contamination of cleanup personnel, as well as prevent the spread of contamination inside and outside the structure during the cleanup. The project manager shall identify if there has been positive COVID-19 indication at the location and being sanitized. This information shall be related to all workers involved with the location cleaning prior to entering by the Field Supervisor. So the warning signs, highly visible warning signs should be posted at all location entryways as determined by the project manager or the Field Supervisor to prevent unauthorized or unprotected personnel from entering locations having currently or previously positive COVID-19 contamination indications while we're doing the cleaning. So ventilation, and now this is important. It hasn't been brought a lot out in public. I've seen a couple, but basically I've seen a couple of indications where people mention it. But basically, while you're in there cleaning, you're going to be using a lot of sodium hypochlorite or other chemicals, and the air inside there, you're going to be kicking up dust and that type of thing. So any window should be open to allow for free ventilation during cleanup. If available, the HVAC system should be evaluated to determine if adequate filtration is incorporated. Now, this takes a little bit more than just the cleaning, so the Field Supervisor needs to know where to look, needs to go ask the site manager or the supervisor of that location or the building manager if they have air conditioning, circulation, a central system, or a VAV box, variable air volume box, that provides air to that room, or if it's just recirculated air, or if it's just open window type of a ventilation. And once that's discovered, if there's central air, that determine if there's a filter being used that filters the air coming out of that. So one of the recommendations is that that filter gets, after we clean, the filter gets changed out. Okay, so while we're cleaning, we can open the windows if there's no central air. If there's central air, we keep the windows closed, we turn the system on, and that will move the air in and out and recirculate and basically provide a lot of air changes. So air changes is where you're shoving the air that's in there out and going up through, and it's being filtered. A lot of times it's recirculated, so the filter's up here, it goes up, it gets filtered, and then provides filtered air back down. So that'll reduce the chances of coronavirus, COVID-19, being in the air at the time while we're cleaning. And all the dust we're kicking up and everything, it'll suck it out. So now these filters may not be HEPA highly efficient, but they will be effective at reducing, because these coronaviruses will stick to particles of dust, whether it's fabrics from your clothes or just dust particles from printers and that type of thing that are going to be in. They can be filtered out, so the coronavirus is going to be on the particulates and not just floating around individually. So these filters should be pretty effective at removing those. So those systems should be turned on, but only they should be turned on during the cleaning. But like I said, the filter needs to be evaluated. Now typically they're going to have what's called a MERV, probably a 10, or they could have something up to like a 13 or 14. The higher the MERV number, the higher efficiency, smaller particles it'll filter out. Now, if it doesn't have the filter, then it should not be turned on, because it's just going to be recirculating the air and it's going to be contaminating the ventilation system. Now, if it doesn't have a filter and it's been used in there, we should look at, part of our process of sanitizing would be to fumigate the ventilation system. So find the return ducts and fumigate up inside there until it comes out the supply ducts into the building. So that will fumigate and sanitize the ducting system and the HVAC system. Now we can do that. That should be done at the end of the shift. So if there's no filter, don't turn it on while we're cleaning. And we just have to clean the area and then turn it on to fumigate it. Okay. Now, if there is a filter, turn it on while we're cleaning. And then at the end of cleaning, we can fumigate it while the filter is still inside there. And then we could change out that filter with a new filter. And the idea would be to maybe up the MERV of the filter, the efficiency of the filter. So now the procedures for cleaning and sanitizing. So basically, so all surfaces and materials within the affected area should be pre-cleaned to remove gross filth and or fecal matter or kind of somewhat organized. Kind of if it's a desk with a bunch of different papers on it, maybe move the papers over to one spot. Just shove it over to an area there, stack them up, however. But just kind of make it so that you're able to actually clean some of the desk. So they should be, and the area should be pre-cleaned to remove the gross filth and fecal matter or other dirt or whatever, followed by a thorough sanitization with a disinfectant solution, disinfectant spray or disinfectant towelettes. So once you've cleaned up the gross stuff and you've kind of organized things, then go ahead and wipe it down, the TV, the desks, the mice, that type of thing. Now, typically you want to spray it with our cleaning solutions. Hopefully it's not going to damage the desk, so be careful about that. But spray it and let it sit for as long as you can. If you can leave it more than 10 minutes without it damaging the desk, do that. That will sanitize and kill a lot of the bacteria or viruses. So disinfectant solution can be applied to the surfaces with saturated towels or sponges, as well as by misting. So you have a little hand sprayer for the desks. So instead of using a backpack sprayer that we're using for the floors, walls, that type of thing, we can use a hand sprayer to spray it on the desks and some of the smaller areas. So that can be sprayed and left. So you might start at 3 or 4 desks, start spraying one desk, and go over the next desk and spray it. This is after you've cleaned the gross materials up and kind of organized a little bit. But you spray one desk, spray the next, do 4 or 5 desks or however, and then go back and then wipe them in that order. So that means it'll keep the chemicals on it as long as possible. So don't just clean one desk, spray and wipe, spray and wipe. Spray 5 or 6, 7 or 8 in a line, and go back and start and then wipe those up. Now, and when you wipe, you want to try to minimize your production of dust. So do it in a smooth manner, back and forth, back and forth. Don't wipe it fast, because that can kick up other dust that may not have been wetted. So do nice slow movements, even movements as you're cleaning a desk. Now the same with the floors. So when you're doing the floor, we're going to use a hand sprayer. We're going to wet the floors down. Now realize it's going to be slippery with your rubber boots on, and if you're using Clorox or any type of detergent type material, it's going to be extra slippery. So once you wet it down, wet it behind you as you're walking away, and go back over, and cover one whole area. Leave it sit there for at least 10 minutes or longer if possible, and then go back to the beginning and then start wiping it up, whether it's with a Swiffer, mops, towels, rags, however we're mopping them up. So one of the things too is that to suppress and prevent the pathogens from becoming airborne during the removal of heavy contamination, materials such as fecal matter or other, I mean, you can find things like bird droppings for some reason that maybe fell out of the whatever. But if you have any type of materials down there, when you're spraying with the sprayer, whether it's the pump spray or even a fogger, type of thing, that actually will kick up dirt and dust. So be careful spraying that as you, and walk away from it as you're spraying. So it will be kicking up, even though it's getting the wet down there. As those particles, the mist hits the floor and stuff, it will kick up dust. Now you're going to be increasing the humidity, so that should hopefully reduce the dust that's going to be in the air. So as you spray and the area gets more humid in there, that's going to minimize the dust in the air. Let's see. So, okay, so now after all the cleaning and you've thrown your disposable cleaning materials in each site into the red bags, then you want to, and you're ready to leave, then you want to disinfect your equipment, tools, and your PPE. So all the tools, equipment, and individual non-disposable personal protective equipment used in the cleanup of contaminated areas should be cleaned and sanitized using an effective disinfectant and wetting prior to removal from the contaminated area. So when you're inside of a, let's say you walk into a hallway and you're going to be doing rooms on both sides. So you're going to consider that hallway and the rooms to be contaminated. So when you take your PPE off, go out of the whole area and step outside, and then you have what's called a contaminant reduction zone. So you have an area marked off there that people are going to come out to do their deconning and doffing of their equipment. You have another area where people are entering and exiting that's going to be away from that area. So keep all of your equipment on, masks, everything, until you get out of the building. Don't take them off just because you stepped out of the room. Wait until you get out of the building. Now the field supervisor should point out and identify the areas for the contaminant reduction zone. So everybody must follow those procedures and only decon and doff your equipment in those zones. So now keep in mind, you're going to be coming out of there with a bunch of equipment. So before you take off your equipment, your PPE, you need to decontaminate your tools. Okay, so you can do that by setting to the side. You can spray them down, you're soaking them, but you spray those down and let them soak in the cleaning, the disinfectant, for as long as you can, and then clean them and then set those aside. Now after those are cleaned and all the equipment is cleaned and set over to the side, then you can start taking your equipment off. Okay, and be careful, don't recontaminate those. So as you're cleaning those, you're going to have cleaning solution on your gloves. Clean your gloves off and stuff. So make sure you're not using contaminated gloves basically to clean them, because you can get the virus back on there. It's not going to be very much, probably not going to be a major hazard, but it's good procedures to clean your PPE with clean gloves. So cloth, sponges, mop pads, etc. should be soaked in disinfectant solutions such as the sodium hypochlorite for 30 minutes or more before being squeezed out and secured for future reuse. Personnel exterior coveralls should be decontaminated using the SaLUT PPE doffing standard operating procedure, and I gave a presentation on that in a previous video. So this is disposal of infectious waste materials. So soiled cleaning materials such as paper towels, used disinfectants, wipes, etc. should be placed in the red double-bagged trash bag, sealed with duct tape, labeled and disposed of as infectious materials in accordance with local requirements. Now, at the end, there needs to be a final visual inspection and monitoring. So the field supervisor should go in and evaluate the level of cleanliness. Now they can do that when the workers say that they're done with a particular room. He can go in and take a look. He will have to, or the field supervisor will have to have the PPE on as well going in. But they will take a look and evaluate if it's the effectiveness of the cleaning or sanitizing. So air sampling, surface sampling, or the use of any other method intended to confirm no infectious agents remain following the sanitizing is unnecessary in most cases. However, before a cleaning sanitizing activity is considered finished, the cleaned area should be inspected visually by the field supervisor to ensure that no residual dust or debris remains. Once inspected and approved, any entry warning signs and or tape shall be removed and each replaced with signage indicating that the location has been sanitized on, and put the date of sanitizing by SaLUT Incorporated and a contact name, which would be the project manager, and the project manager's contact information. So any of the contaminated waste needs to be disposed of properly and not nearly moved to another area where it could be a health hazard. Now, if you're going to be doing multiple rooms, you don't have to seal up your disposal bag until the end of the day's work. So that's when it can be sealed up, but it can be moved over or left outside there as long as there's somebody there to make sure that the public doesn't go in and grab these bags, grab the contamination. It needs to be properly labeled, and we need to properly secure it. Okay, so now before the activity is started, before the cleaning and sanitizing is started, the quantity of material to remove should be estimated. Requirements established by local and state authorities for the removal, transportation, and disposal of contaminated materials should be followed. If required, arrangements should be made with the landfill operator concerning the quantity of material to be stowed, dates, material, and the disposal location. So all of that should be established prior to the cleaning and sanitizing, should be established by the project manager. Now, emergency medical conditions. Typically, during these cleanups, the type of accidents and injuries that can occur is slips, trips, and fall is the main one. So, like I said, because of the wet floor and stuff, so if somebody slips, trips, or falls, and we have to call 911, we need to inform the responders that we're in a location where we're sanitizing for the coronavirus, that's COVID-19. Also, typically, care must be taken to, when we remove the person out, if we have to carry the person out, we're all wearing all of our gear, we're potentially contaminated. So we have to be careful if we're going to take off their personal protective equipment, or if we're going to leave their personal protective equipment on. We can't, if we have time, if it's just a sprained ankle or something like that, we can go through the whole process of decontaminating and doffing the equipment. Now, in my previous video on donning, doffing, and decontaminating PPE, we indicated that you have to basically do the buddy system. So the buddy system is important throughout the whole period of working in cleaning and sanitizing. The reason it's important is that you keep an eye on the other person, make sure that they didn't rip their gear, that they're not aware, and they rip pretty easily, especially along the seams and the crotch, and so they can rip and tear up pretty easy. And if they're not aware of it, they can walk around, the whole back end can be opened up, or knees or whatever all torn up. So also for doffing and donning, the buddy system is very effective to help pulling these things on. They're very awkward, they don't stretch, so they can be easily torn just putting them on. So a buddy system helping you to doff, put the equipment on, or take it don, put the equipment on, and doff when you take it off is very important. And always remember to put when you're donning, put your respirator on last, and when you're doffing, take it off last. So, but like I said, you need to make the emergency responders aware of what the activities were, that we're sanitizing a building that has a potential for coronavirus exposure. Okay, and so that ends the presentation on the task hazard analysis and procedures for cleaning and sanitizing buildings and locations.